NATO and the EU do not have 3-5 years to prepare. It is necessary to seize the moment by strengthening Ukraine in order to probably avoid such a scenario. I have no doubt that the Russian leadership and Putin personally took a one-way ticket.
Hello and welcome to Ukraine in Flames, a special project by Ukraine Media Center, an NGO Euro-Atlantic Force, and I'm your host, Myroslava Yaremki. Putin may use the period of electoral turbulence in the USA and attack one of the NATO countries already in the winter of 2025. Europe has finally woken up and begun to realize the danger of the situation, but the pace of this realization still does not match the level of the threat. Europe and NATO really need Ukraine. These are several key theses that prominent Ukrainian diplomat and expert Valeriy Chaly expressed in his recent interview in the press center of Ukraine Crisis Media Center. In today's episode, we're going to talk with Mr. Chaly about the current state and future prospects of Ukraine, EU, NATO, and the world in general. If you want to learn more about this subject, please continue watching this video and subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss our videos in the future. The heroic efforts of the Ukrainian people over the past 2 years have given Western partners time to prepare. Ukraine will not back down. But this does not guarantee peace in other parts of Europe. Threats from terrorism, uncontrolled migration, radicalism, or even climate change are more visible and seem to require priority attention and response. But it is only before a multi-ton missile launched from a Russian strategic bomber capable of reaching almost anywhere in Europe lands in your backyard. This is an extract from the article in the French newspaper Le Monde, where Mr. Chaly insists that it is time for European countries to analyze the danger and quickly change their strategy. Let him elaborate more on that.
NATO will not avoid a direct clash with Russia. I'll tell you more. There have already been such clashes. However, they have not been reflected in NATO's active actions yet. But there have been Russian missile attacks on the alliance territories, and there were also Iranian-origin Shahid drone attacks there. And what we did not publicize, no one publicized so openly, there were air clashes involving Russian aviation, both above land and over the Black Sea. So the forecasts were correct. NATO countries began to make statements only 2 years later that they should prepare for war. The statements are made both at the military, intelligence level and at the political level. And this awareness is what was obvious to us in Ukraine 2 years ago. Now it's a matter of time. I have no doubt that the Russian leadership and Putin personally took a one-way ticket. And I think that with a certain weakening and unwillingness of Ukraine's partner countries to strengthen Ukraine, if the war turns into a permanent positional war, they will find the possibility to provoke at least against a NATO country. It was further confirmed by a recent interview of the Russian leader for an American media outlet. There he said a new thing that he hadn't said before. In fact, he made claims in historical terms and in modern terms, claims to the territories of other NATO countries, in particular Poland. He said that Poland had provoked Hitler into World War II. Although this completely contradicts the conclusions of the Nuremberg trial and historical facts, but the mention of territories that went to Poland is not just another historical angle. It is a very clear hint that they have plans to attack NATO countries. We will see what country it will be, whether it will really be towards Poland through the Suwalki Gap, or whether it'll be a simpler scheme, a provocation on the border with Estonia, as it was in Russian operational plans earlier. But I'm convinced that it is unavoidable that NATO and the EU do not have 3-5 years to prepare. It is necessary to seize the moment by strengthening Ukraine in order to probably avoid such a scenario.
Ultimately, Ukraine buys time for NATO member countries to prepare. Even though, according to the Munich Security Index, most European countries no longer perceive Russia and Russian aggression as a threat. Among, say, the G7, only Great Britain and Japan consider Russia and Russian aggression a major threat. And in countries such as Germany or France, the threat from Russia is in 6th or 7th place.
I would like to clarify. This is the problem. They don't understand. They think that Ukraine will hold back for a certain period. And after that, weakened Russia will either not be able to attack or will be a rival that can be dealt with. This is a strategic mistake. I emphasize that Russia will seize the moment now, before the NATO countries in Europe, which has finally woken up, are ready. All plans to deploy troops, for example, a mechanized Bundeswehr brigade, in Lithuania by 2027, or strengthen NATO's capabilities on NATO's eastern borders, are all plans that have not been implemented yet. Therefore, Putin and their ruling elite will take advantage of this very moment. That's the first thing. And secondly, they don't really have these 3-5 years either. And therefore, in terms of time, it's a very big mistake that everyone thinks that it will be postponed while there is an active brutal war in Ukraine. No. If it is a war without additional weapons, without longer-range missiles, airplanes, without turning this war into a maneuver one, if it is a positional war like World War I, only in color, with colorful images in the trenches, Russia will have the opportunity to do it in the near future. I think we can talk with a high degree of probability about this timing, that it could be even early next year, at a time when the United States will have a period of transformation, transitioning from the presidential election to the inauguration, or the acting US President Joseph Biden, or the new US President. They can use this period. Winter is a very favorable period for them. Therefore, I think and emphasize once again, the intelligence agencies of these countries and the ministries of defense that study all this must consider this. NATO has no 3-5 years. Russia and Putin imposed a total war with the non-recognition of the right to existence of the Ukrainian people and Ukraine. And as I said, it will be extended to other countries with the same reasoning. A total war is something that requires the inclusion of all forces, in this case of Ukraine, because it is fighting against Russia on its own. But in the future, it will be necessary to involve all forces, not only military and technical aid, of all these countries. First of all, it is economic pressure. And we see that the sanctions work partially, because, firstly, they do not block the possibility of Russia's militarization, and secondly, they give bad signals, wrong signals to other countries.
Certainly, the international community must actively curb any attempts by other countries to support Russia in this war. Evidence suggests the presence of mercenaries from different countries in Russia, along with confirmed arms supplies from North Korea and Iran. And unfortunately, countries claiming neutrality inadvertently contribute to the fact that Russia receives additional weapons. Mr. Chaly will reflect more on that.
And a big block of issues, of course, and you can't get anywhere from it now, it is the strengthening of Ukraine. not only in terms of air defense systems, which do protect people, but unfortunately, Russia's barbaric way of using weapons against civilians, shootings from redesigned air defense systems, the S-300 system, not to mention the prohibited types that Russia occasionally uses. This is something that should be stopped in maximum ways. Well, and signals. It is necessary to look for united positions of the whole world, including China, India, South Africa, Brazil, countries that, despite entering into some partnerships with Russia, in particular BRICS, still, I think, don't want to be those who will historically be called, on the one hand, countries that indulged in aggression, and on the other hand, losers. Because there is no doubt that Putin and Russia will lose strategically. There is only one question: by what resources, what forces? And in conclusion, I will say, there is no longer an issue of international law or international relations, but an issue of justice. It must exist. It exists in human relationships. And one country cannot oppose Russia, which has declared war on the forces of democracy, including NATO and the EU. It is wrong. And the stretching of such a model of war in time can play badly. It can be a bad joke for the countries that are Ukraine's partners. And therefore, it's not about the war in Ukraine, as someone wants to claim that there is a war in Ukraine and people are somehow holding back. No, this is about a war between two systems that are now reaching the level of confrontation in which it is decided how the world will develop. And unfortunately for Ukraine, the point of their intersection in military terms is here, on Ukrainian territory. And therefore, I think that the external audience will see more outspoken Ukrainians in the future.
You've been watching a special project by Ukraine Media Center and Euro-Atlantic course dedicated to the Russian-Ukrainian war, Ukraine in Flames. In the description under this video, you can find information on how you can help Ukraine fight Russian aggression. If you find our work useful, please like and share this video. Slava Ukraini!